Okay, welcome back. In the previous video, we created a drop weapon function that allows us to hit the E key and detach the weapon from our character. Now, in this video, we're going to take care of the physics asset for the weapon. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the meshes folder that we put in our weapons. So we're at _game/weapons/meshes, and that is the Bellica Guns skeletal mesh that we have for our weapon. So here we have the mesh editor, and we see two guns because this mesh uses the Bellica skeleton. And the Bellica skeleton has our right hand socket, which has a preview asset. So that's why we're seeing that gun. That's set to be the preview asset. Now here in asset details, we can close the drop down for material slots. And if we scroll down, we'll see here that we're using the Bellica skeleton. And just down past that, we'll see in the physics section, we're using a physics asset here that corresponds to Bellica's body. If we browse to this asset and open it, then we'll see that there's this physics asset here, and this has a bunch of collision volumes in it that don't really pertain to the weapon. So what we want is a simple physics asset for our Bellica Guns skeletal mesh. So let's go ahead and create a new physics asset. So let's go to our Weapons and Meshes folder and right-click on Bellica Guns and go to Create, Physics Asset, Create. Now we have this primitive type, and by default it's capsule, but we can choose box. That's going to be more appropriate for us. So choose box and go ahead and click Create Asset. Now we don't need any of this stuff. So we can click on everything below the pelvis, highlight it, and hit Delete. And now we simply have this single physics body for the pelvis bone. And we can take this physics body and move it down to our gun at the root here. And we can scale it so that it encompasses the gun. Just like that. And really, that's the only physics body that we need for the gun. So we can click Save, and we can go back to Bellica Guns, click Asset Details, and we can take this physics asset and instead use Bellica Guns Physics. So search for guns, and here's Bellica Guns Physics. Now we can even do the same thing for the lighting as well. Type in guns and Bellica Guns Physics. So go ahead and click Save, and now our Bellica Guns mesh only has a single physics body for its physics asset. And that's what we want if we're going to turn on physics and have it fall to the floor. So save that. Now, if you downloaded the gun skeletal mesh from GitHub, then you're going to have this Bellica Guns skeletal mesh. And if you scroll down in the asset details, all the way down to physics asset here, you'll see that it was imported along with Bellica Guns physics asset. So it's already got a physics asset. What we can do is go into that physics asset and open it. And you'll see that we have a couple of capsules here. We're going to go ahead and select the pistol and the weapon shapes and delete those. And what we're left with is the root. Now we're going to right click and select Add Shape and choose Add Box. Now go ahead and select Scale Mode to scale this box so that it fits the shape of the weapon. And now we have a nice box that's completely level with the ground, which is exactly what we want. Go ahead and save. So now what we'd like to do is go back into Visual Studio, and let's take a look at our item.cpp where we have our set item properties, and we're going to add a case for falling. So let's add case item state EIS underscore falling, and we'll add the break. And for falling, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get our item mesh, and we're going to set simulate physics to true. This way it'll start falling. Now we're also going to set collision enabled, and we're going to set this to E collision enabled query in physics. Now we'll set the collision response to all channels to ignore. So item mesh, set collision response to all channels to E collision response ignore. And typically items in the world like the walls and the floor are world static. So we'll say item mesh set collision response to channel, and we're going to set it to E collision channel world static, and the response will be E collision response block. So we can add the comment here, set mesh properties, and then we can set the properties for the area sphere and the collision box. So while it's falling, we really don't want to show the pickup widget, and we don't want to be able to line trace to the weapon at all in general. So we're going to use the same settings as the equipped settings. Namely, we're going to copy these so we have basically our area sphere and our collision box turned off. And so if we drop the weapon and we throw it away from the body, then it'll be basically turned off until it hits the ground and returns to the pickup state. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do in drop weapon is we're going to set the equipped weapon item state. So we're going to say equipped weapon, and we're going to call set item state, and we're going to set that state to E item state falling. And that should take care of setting all of the collision presets and the physics and everything else. So we can compile this, and we're going to go into the editor, and we're going to take a look at our weapons folder and base weapon. And let's take a look at the item mesh and go down to the physics section. And let's uncheck simulate physics to have that default value of false. We only want to simulate physics when we go into a state that needs physics, such as falling. So we can select these weapons here in the world and scroll down to the physics section, and now we can see that they're not simulating physics. So that's exactly what we want. We only want to simulate physics if we're going into, say, the falling state, or a state that will need physics. And the last thing we want to do is when we're falling, after setting simulate physics to true, we're going to also set enable gravity to true. So we're going to say item mesh set enable gravity, set that to true, which means that in our other states, we're going to want to set false. So let's go ahead and go to equipped, and after we set simulate physics to false, we're going to set enable gravity to false, even though simulate physics is going to be false, so gravity won't apply anyway. This sets our intention. So let's go ahead and do that just after set simulate physics here in pickup as well. We'll set this to false. Okay, so we'll compile this and then we'll give it a try. So I'm here in the editor and I'll hit E, and there drops our weapon. So you might have missed it. We'll bring the character over here, press E, and there is the weapon. And you see the weapon, it's pretty dark in here. We can't really see a whole lot, but you can see that the weapon is there. If I hit Shift F1 and I eject, then I can select the weapon. It's sitting there on the ground. And we're going to add some glowing effects to the weapon so we can see it in darker environments. And also we can change the environment or add lights if we need to. But that is going to conclude this video. We now have the ability to drop the weapon. Let's go under this light here and hit E. And there we've detached the weapon and dropped it. So in the next video, we are going to launch the weapon out a little ways when we drop it. So that way it kind of bounces off the ground. And that way it'll be a little bit more dramatic than just dropping it. So we'll continue in the next video.